Celtics fans, buckle up because we've got a wild situation developing, and it centers around a name that's been stirring debate across the entire NBA. Ben Simmons. Yes, the former All-Star, former #1 pick, and once touted as the future of the league is now at the center of a surprising and uncertain chapter in his career. And guess what? The Boston Celtics are right there in the mix. Or at least they were. Over the past few months, the rumors have been swirling that the Celtics were not just in the conversation, but actually favorites to land Ben Simmons. That's right, favorites. A team coming off an NBA title run, stacked with depth and chemistry, was being linked to a player who hasn't played meaningful basketball in what feels like ages. And yet, it was a real possibility. Until now, because in the span of just 24 hours, things have taken a complete turn. Word is out that Ben Simmons is seriously considering walking away from the game entirely. Not just stepping back, not just rehabbing, retiring from the NBA. And let's be real, no one saw this coming. Not this suddenly, and not with the level of finality that's starting to feel real. Now, we've seen plenty of speculation about Simmons over the years, whether it was about his shooting woes, his time with the Sixers, the failed Brooklyn experiment, or even the brief flashes where he looked like he could still be a defensive force. But the idea of Simmons flat out leaving the game? That's on a whole different level. This isn't just some late-night social media rumor, either. We're talking about multiple credible reports confirming that Simmons is evaluating whether continuing his career is even worth it. And what adds fuel to the fire is that his own agent, Bernie Lee, has now officially stepped away. Gone. No longer representing Simmons. That kind of move doesn't happen casually, especially not with a player who's been trying to salvage what's left of a once-promising career. Let's rewind for a second. Ben Simmons entered the league with comparisons to LeBron James. A big, athletic, versatile player who could guard any position, see the floor like a point guard, and dominate in transition. But the player we saw back then feels like a ghost. Injuries, mental hurdles, trade drama, and flat-out inconsistency have all taken their toll. And while the potential has always been there, the reality is that Simmons hasn't been able to stay on the court, much less make a real impact. Even as recently as a few weeks ago, there were whispers that the Celtics could make a move for him. And for a team like Boston, always looking for that extra piece to keep the championship window open, Simmons might have made sense, in theory, especially with his defensive versatility. We're talking about a guy who, when healthy and locked in, can guard positions 1 through 5. He can run the break, find open shooters, and bring a level of size and athleticism that's rare for a ball handler. But that's all hypothetical. Because the Simmons we've seen lately, he's not that guy. And now, here we are. According to league insiders, Simmons is weighing his options, but retirement is genuinely on the table. And let's be honest, that has to make you wonder what's really going on behind the scenes. Is this about his body breaking down? Is it mental fatigue? A lack of passion for the game? Maybe it's all of the above. But when you combine that with the news that his agent has removed him from the player union's official roster, it's impossible to ignore the signs. That brings us back to Boston. Because while the Celtics might have been eyeing Simmons as a low-risk addition, a guy they could bring in on a minimum or non-guaranteed deal to see if he still had anything left, the situation now looks a lot more complicated. Do you really want to invest a roster spot, even a cheap one, in a player who might not even want to be out there? Sources have said that if Simmons does try to stay in the league, he'd likely be looking at a contract worth around $4 million guaranteed, or maybe even just a vet minimum deal with no guarantees. That's a massive fall from grace for a player who, not long ago, was on a max contract and viewed as a foundational piece for a franchise. The problem is that the market for backup point guards is basically non-existent right now. Teams aren't exactly lining up to bring in that kind of role player, especially when there are younger, cheaper, more available options with fewer question marks. Even a guy like Russell Westbrook is struggling to find a landing spot at the moment. And we're talking about a former MVP. Simmons, for all his unique gifts, doesn't stretch the floor. He doesn't score. And while his defense and court vision are real assets, those skills only matter if he's physically and mentally ready to contribute. Right now, that's a massive if. It's also worth noting that the Celtics have an open roster spot. And when teams like Boston head into the regular season with a spot open, it's usually strategic. They want flexibility. They want to be able to adapt mid-season, maybe scoop up a veteran if someone gets bought out, or make a move if injuries start to pile up. That's why adding Simmons now, when his availability and motivation are in serious question, might not be the smartest move. And let's be real, this team just won a championship. They've got momentum, chemistry, identity. Throwing in a player who's uncertain about his own future could disrupt that balance, especially when the team already has a clear system in place, built around three-point shooting, pace, and defensive intensity. Now, could Simmons fit in if he's fully committed? Maybe. Defensively, he'd absolutely bring value. His ability to switch to guard bigs, wings, and even point guards would give Boston even more flexibility on that end. And his passing could open up shots for guys like Peyton Pritchard, Derek White, or even the Jays. But that would only work if he accepts a reduced role, maybe as a small ball five or a second-unit facilitator. Not the main guy, not even a starter. The problem? There's been no indication that Simmons is ready to accept that kind of role. In fact, all signs point in the opposite direction. He's reportedly questioning whether it's even worth sticking around as a bench player. That doesn't sound like someone who's eager to adapt and grind his way back to relevance. That sounds like someone who's tired. Done. And let's talk about the locker room dynamic. This Celtics team has been built on accountability, on guys knowing their roles and buying in. That's been the culture under Brad Stevens in the front office and Joe Mazzulla on the sidelines. Adding a wild card like Simmons, even if he says all the right things at the start, carries risk. What happens if he's not happy with his minutes? What happens if his body doesn't respond the way he hopes? That kind of uncertainty can become a distraction real quick. There was a moment when taking a flyer on Simmons might have been considered a savvy, under-the-radar move. A classic buy low scenario. But now, with everything that's happening, the retirement talks, the agent bailing, the questions about his mindset, it's hard to see that move as anything other than a gamble. Now, if we zoom out for a second and really try to make sense of the entire Ben Simmons situation, it's actually a bit tragic. This is a player who, just a few seasons ago, was starting all-star games, making all-NBA defensive teams, and being praised for his generational talent. He had the kind of size and vision that scouts drool over. A 6'10" playmaker who could run the floor like a point guard, lock down your best scorer, and play at a pace that could shift momentum in a heartbeat. That version of Ben Simmons was a legitimate building block for any franchise. But the league doesn't wait. It never does. And Simmons has learned that the hard way. After the infamous playoff meltdown in Philadelphia, where he passed up an open dunk and basically froze under the pressure, things started to unravel. The criticism was brutal. The fans turned on him. The media dissected every move, every missed free throw, every moment of hesitation. And instead of rising to the occasion, Simmons disappeared. First mentally, then physically. He sat out games. He requested trades. He spoke publicly about needing space and time. And honestly, he probably did. But the NBA isn't always a forgiving place, especially when you're supposed to be a star. When he finally landed in Brooklyn, many thought it would be the restart he needed. A fresh environment, less pressure, a chance to redefine his role and get back to playing basketball without all the baggage. But that never happened. Injuries popped up again. His back became a recurring issue. His minutes were limited. And when he did play, he looked tentative, like a player who had forgotten how to trust his body and his instincts. Every once in a while, you'd see a flash, a crisp pass, a burst to the rim, a big defensive stop. But those moments were few and far between. The consistency just wasn't there, and the patience from coaches and front offices started to wear thin. Now, as free agency continues to settle and rosters begin to finalize, Simmons finds himself on the outside looking in. The market isn't just cold. It's practically frozen. There are whispers that the Knicks might be interested. There's speculation that Boston still sees some value. But nothing solid. Nothing imminent. And that's probably part of why the talk of retirement is even happening at all. For a player who once had the entire league watching his every move, being ignored is the loudest statement of all. For the Celtics, all of this puts them in a really interesting position. On one hand, they have a championship-caliber roster. They just came off a dominant playoff run. They've got their stars locked in, their role players defined, and a front office that knows exactly what it's doing. So bringing in someone like Simmons doesn't feel like a necessity. It feels more like a project, a wild card. And for a team this close to another title, is now really the time to experiment? But on the other hand, championship windows are never guaranteed. We've seen teams implode from injuries, locker room issues, or just bad luck. Having a versatile player like Simmons stashed on the bench, ready to step in if needed, might not be the worst idea, if he's healthy and engaged. That's the massive caveat, because what you don't want is to bring in someone who becomes a distraction. Someone whose presence forces the coaching staff to make uncomfortable decisions. Someone who isn't fully bought into the role he's being asked to play. Simmons, at this stage, is not walking into any team as a starter. That's just not happening. Not with his current resume. Any team that signs him is doing so with the understanding that he's a bench player, a depth piece. And honestly, that's probably a hard pill for a guy like Simmons to swallow. His entire career has been built on being the man, the number one pick, the star, the future. Accepting a lesser role isn't just about ego, it's about identity. And not every player can make that transition gracefully. Take Carmelo Anthony, for example. It took years for him to accept coming off the bench. But once he did, he found a second life in the league. He became a valuable piece for playoff teams. He adjusted. He evolved. That's what Simmons needs to do if he still wants to be in the NBA. But if that desire isn't there, if the fire is gone, then forcing it won't work. And that's where things get tricky for Boston. Because as much as they might like the idea of Simmons as a theoretical fit, the reality could be far messier. Defensively, he still makes sense. You can never have too many long, switchable defenders in today's NBA. He can guard 5 positions. He can take pressure off Tatum and Brown on the perimeter. He can anchor a second unit with his length and anticipation. But that's only if he's healthy. Only if he's conditioned. Only if he's mentally ready. Because we've seen what a disengaged Ben Simmons looks like, and it's not pretty. Offensively, we all know the limitations. He doesn't shoot. Period. Teams will sag off him. They'll clog the lane. They'll force him into uncomfortable spots. But in the right system, with the right pieces around him that can be mitigated, the Celtics love to space the floor. They move the ball. They cut. They run actions that create open looks. Simmons could actually help in that regard. He's still an elite passer. He still sees angles most guys don't. And if he can attack the rim with confidence, even if it's only 5 or 6 possessions a game, he could open up clean looks for guys like Derek White or Sam Hauser. But again, all of this is hypothetical. And that's the problem. The Celtics aren't a team that operates on hope. Brad Stevens has built this roster with precision. Every piece fits. Every role is defined. This is not a team that needs to take flyers. If they bring in a guy like Simmons, it has to be for a very specific reason. And they have to be absolutely sure that he's willing to buy in. At this point, that assurance doesn't exist. Not with the retirement rumors. Not with the agent walking away. Not with the radio silence from Simmons himself. Until we hear directly from him. Until he comes out and says, I still want to play. I still have something to prove. I'm willing to earn it. It's all just noise. And the Celtics are smart enough not to chase noise. For now, the Celtics can afford to be cautious. They've earned that right. And unless Simmons shows something drastically different, physically or mentally, it's hard to imagine Boston throwing him a lifeline. At least not yet. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The Boston Celtics locker room may be simmering with tension as whispers of internal conflict surface. Sources close to the team claim that head coach Joe Mazzulla recently delivered a blunt and unsettling message to one of his players. You don't wear this jersey anymore. While the exact target of the statement remains undisclosed, the words have already sent shockwaves through the organization and NBA circles alike. Insiders suggest that the incident stems from behavior perceived as contaminating the squad. While no official details have emerged, the language used by Mazzulla is unusually harsh for a coach known for his steady demeanor. Observers speculate that the warning may be connected to off-court issues affecting team chemistry or perhaps on-court attitudes that have disrupted the Celtics' flow. The Boston locker room has long been praised for its professionalism, but rumors of this level of discord are rare. Players reportedly reacted with a mix of surprise and concern, with some quietly discussing whether this marks the beginning of a larger shakeup. The timing is particularly delicate as the team navigates a competitive season where unity is critical. NBA insiders are already dissecting the implications. Could this be a precursor to a trade, a suspension, or even a benching? Or is it merely a dramatic warning meant to recalibrate a player's commitment to the franchise? The secrecy surrounding the matter only fuels speculation, and social media chatter has exploded, with fans and analysts debating the possible identities and repercussions. Mazzulla's statement, if confirmed, underscores a shift in his approach, one that appears less tolerant of behavior deemed harmful to team culture. The Celtics, historically known for blending veteran leadership with young talent, now face the challenge of managing potential internal fractures while maintaining their playoff aspirations. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.